Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or indeed good evening, depending on your time zone and depending on when you are watching this. It is Tuesday, the 26th of May, 2020. I'm James Innes, and this is my daily YouTube show, The Jobs Guru. It's lovely to see you here for today's episode, but please do think about subscribing so that you don't miss out on the next episode. Now, I did actually say in my last show on Thursday that I'd be back on Monday, but that was because I had completely overlooked the fact that yesterday was due to be a bank holiday, at least here in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Sometimes I just get too caught up in my work. Anyway, I do hope you all had a really lovely bank holiday weekend. I did. Felt very strange having 4 whole days off from this show, but I'm straight back in the saddle today. And in today's show, I'm going to be taking a look at the latest jobs, career and employment news, in particular looking at the Equal Pay Act, a full 50 years after its introduction back in 1970, when I was precisely -5 years old. I will as always be covering a question from one of my viewers, this time about finding work when you have a police caution. I'll be talking about the issue of companies going into administration. I'll be examining the shift in the employment market from employers battling over talent to employers being faced with a glut of talent. It has become a buyer's market. Unemployment levels are through the roof. How can you stand out from the crowd? Might employers be making people lower offers? Are employers going to make less effort to retain staff now? Etc. A really rather interesting and certainly very topical subject. And next in the interview question series, we'll be finding out if you like to sing in the bath. Somewhere over the rainbow. Yeah, okay. If you have any questions or comments as you watch, like, don't ever sing again, James, I don't know what possessed me, too much caffeine probably, then do please let me have them in the comments section below. And if you like what you see, then do please hit that YouTube thumbs up. First, as always, I've had a good read of all the main headlines, and in particular the workplace, jobs, careers and employment related headlines. There's only really been one main news story over the past few days, and I don't know about you, but I'm really pretty fed up with the whole thing. So let's not dwell on it in today's show. Let's move straight on to talking about our new quarantine system. I know, this might be outside of my field of expertise, but I can't help but wonder, why is the UK imposing a quarantine from June the 8th? I mean, instead of back in February or March or April, or indeed right now. It all seems totally pointless and ridiculous to me. The Italians are about to drop their quarantine. The Spanish announced just last night they're dropping theirs at the end of this month, openly admitting this is to encourage much needed tourist money. There's a BBC article which read, opening up the holiday market again before the summer season is over is seen as crucial to the Spanish economy. And the French, much as I love them, they don't have any quarantine at all except for a rather silly tit-for-tat reciprocal basis. But we are imposing one from June the 8th on a 3-week rolling basis. What is going on? Then it occurred to me, bing, our country as a whole has, like many, suffered very badly financially as a result of this whole coronavirus crisis. And yet surveys show that the so-called average man, an expression I hate, now has more money in their pockets than they did before this all began, i.e. there are now a lot of people with a lot of disposable income having received full salary and been unable to spend as much as they normally would. And what do us Brits normally do in the summer? Well, we leave the country and we take our money with us and we essentially give it to the French, the Spanish, the Italians, etc. But we're not going to do that, are we, if we face a 2-week quarantine on our return? You can't impose a quarantine for economic reasons, only medical reasons. So are the medical reasons here totally trumped up, no pun intended, and it's actually all about the money? Clearly, it would be beneficial for the country as a whole for its people to stay here and spend their money on what is known as internal tourism, rather than go abroad. Especially when our economy has taken a major hit anyway. The last thing we should be doing, I suppose, is going away on holiday and essentially bolstering other people's economies. But you can't tell people that, and you certainly can't make them do that, and nor should you. A little thing called freedom, yeah? But you can impose a quarantine to make it happen anyway. Now, I may well be far too cynical here. Maybe we too will drop our quarantine at the end of June after those first 3 weeks. But if we do, then it then begs the question, what was the point in the first place? Anyway, right, rant over. Let's move on to some workplace news. Thank you for letting me get that off my chest. You know, I've been building up that head. Now, what I'd like to focus on in respect of workplace news today is a piece in The Guardian. 29,000 claims a year despite 50 years since the Equal Pay Act. Indeed, it's headline news in The Guardian work and career section. 50 years after the passing of the Equal Pay Act, about 29,000 people a year are still lodging claims for redress under this legislation. I saw a comedian on TV the other day, Sean Locke. He's probably got better timing than I do. Anyway, his gag: a woman's work is never done. Maybe that's why they're paid less. Boom, boom. Okay, the joke is funny, maybe. Certainly not with my delivery, but the reality isn't funny at all. So here's some background for you. The Equal Pay Act, 1970, was an act of parliament that prohibited any less favourable treatment between men and women in terms of pay and working conditions of employment. It was inspired by striking women at Ford Dagenham, the factory. It was proposed by the then Labour government, and it was in fact based on a similar act introduced in 1963 in the good old US of A. Now, the Equal Pay Act was ultimately repealed, but its substantive provisions were replicated in the Equality Act of 2010. Part 5, Chapter 3, to be precise. Didn't think I knew that, did you? For an employee to claim, they must prove one of the following. Okay, I have to read this. That the work done by the claimant is the same, or broadly the same, as the other employee. That the work done by the claimant is of equal value in terms of effort, skill, decision, and similar demands to that of the other employee. And 3, that the work done by the claimant is rated by a job evaluation study the same as that of the other employee. Once the employee has established that they are employed on equal work with their comparator, they are then entitled to equal pay, unless the employer proves that the difference in pay is genuinely due to a material factor which is not the difference in gender. Okay, that's the legal bit. So I hear you ask, what's my take on this? Well, whilst the concept of equal pay for equal work may have been around for 50 years now, the consistently high number of employment tribunal claims indicates that this is an issue which some employers are still grappling with, to say the least. Equal pay claims account for at least 1 in 10 employment tribunals. In 2017 to 2018, it was 1 in 5, over 20%, 21% to be precise, I think, in that period. And these stats are very probably only the tip of that iceberg, because a majority of cases, nearly 2/3, are actually withdrawn before a hearing in return for a financial settlement. Bottom line, British employers really need to do better here. There is just no excuse in 2020, not what there was back in 1970, for that matter. Now, later in today's show, I'll be talking about the shift in the employment market from employers battling over talent to employers being faced with a glut of talent. But whilst things may have changed dramatically in the last few months, there is still no excuse for bad behaviour on the part of employers. Now, I guess only time will tell if the number of equal pay claims goes up or down over the course of the next year or two. It's going to be interesting to see. I think one final comment, distinction that's important for me to make on this front is do not confuse issues of equal pay with the gender pay gap. They are not the same thing. The gender pay gap is not just about rates of pay in and of themselves, but it's about men being significantly overrepresented in the best paid jobs and the accompanying and well-known shortage of women in senior positions. The higher the rank in an organisation, the fewer women there will be. But that is a whole nother problem. So, on to that question from one of my viewers. Today's question has been sent in by Kay from Nuneaton in Warwickshire. Dear James, do you have any advice on finding work when you have a police caution? It happened back in 2006 when I was defending myself from an assault. I regret it deeply, and it's affected my career because I never even seem to get an interview. I always declare it. I've also just recovered from cancer and been given the all clear. Will this affect my employability? Well, Kay from Nuneaton in Warwickshire. Really interesting question. It's too true that everyone makes mistakes, but it's unfair for minor mistakes like this to affect the rest of your life. And the good news is that the law is on your side, funny enough. Both cautions and convictions become spent after, it's a technical term, after a certain period of time. And it is illegal for employers to turn down someone for a job if their conviction or caution is spent, unless an official exception applies. There are a few roles where a criminal record check is required, and where even a spent conviction or caution can be grounds for turning someone down, but that's a minority of cases. Simple cautions become spent immediately, and conditional cautions after just 3 months. And you don't even need to tell potential employers about spent convictions or cautions. I always declare it, you say. Well, don't. If you have a criminal record, then it's vital to know your rights under the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act 1974. You generally do not need to declare any spent convictions, and nor should you. As for your cancer, well, first of all, let me say how happy I am for you to have had the all clear. It's great news. But will it affect your employability? That's what you ask. Well, only if you let it, Kay. It's nobody's business but your own. There is absolutely no need whatsoever to mention it to a potential employer. And I'd strongly advise that you don't. Case closed. I'm always open to interesting new questions from my viewers, so if you have a workplace, jobs, careers, or employment-related question for me, then do please type it into that comment section below, and I may well feature it in a future episode of this show. And if I do, then one of my limited edition collector's item Jobs Guru coffee mugs will be yours. Will be yours. You know you want one, don't you? Okay. So here, for display purposes. Weren't expecting that, were you? No, neither was I, bloody children. Anyway, so moving on now. Now, each day, as well as answering, thank you, children. Each day, as well as answering one viewer's specific question, I also look into a specific issue which has been raised by a number of different viewers. And today, I shine my spotlight on companies going into administration. We've already seen some major companies go into administration as a result of this whole coronavirus crisis. We've had news over the weekend, for example, the car rental firm Hertz. They're in major trouble now. And there will be more. And with each one comes the risk, obviously, of significant job losses. So what happens if your company goes into administration? Well, the initial 14 days are critical. If you are made redundant, then you become an ordinary creditor. Again, another legal technical term. Sorry, I'm sprinkling them in here today. Being an ordinary creditor is not good for your chances of getting any money owed. If, however, you survive those initial 14 days before being made redundant, you then become a preferential creditor, giving you priority over ordinary creditors, regardless of whether or not you get made redundant later. So remember, going into administration is not the same as going out of business. Keep your fingers crossed. There's every chance a buyer may be found and your job may be saved. Now, on to the main topic I wish to discuss with you today. The shift in the employment market from employers battling over talent to employers being faced with a glut of talent. It's become a buyer's market. Unemployment levels are through the roof. How can you stand out from the crowd? Might employers be making people lower offers? Are employers going to make less effort to retain staff now? And linking back to today's news and it being 50 years since the introduction of the Equality Act, the Equal Pay Act, the Equality Act didn't come until 2010, are employers going to start taking other liberties? As I mentioned in a previous episode of this show, in December 2019, that's not long ago, the Office for National Statistics, the ONS, they announced that UK unemployment was at its lowest since 1975, which is the year I was born, i.e. employment was at record levels. With record levels of employment, employers really needed to focus on their ability to both attract and then retain talent so that they could compete against others, in a far from saturated jobs market. This so-called war for talent very much put job seekers and employees in the driving seat in the hiring process. They were in a really strong position to demand more from prospective employers, not just in terms of remuneration, but also with regards to better prospects, greater flexibility, improved work-life balance, enhanced overall employee experience, basically. Essentially, top talent could pick and choose what job offer they took, safe in the knowledge that if one company wasn't offering exactly what they were looking for, another one would. Now, fast forward, that's my fast forward gesture that was, fast forward just 5 months to today, and boy, the tables have turned, haven't they? The impact of this whole coronavirus situation on the jobs market has been nothing short of catastrophic. From record levels of employment to historic levels of unemployment. That talent pool is much, much larger now, and the opportunities that are available to them are substantially reduced. So it could therefore be argued that employers now have the advantage here. Those that are lucky enough to survive at all, that is, So, whilst it is well documented that certain sectors have suffered more than others, for example, travel, aviation, hospitality, retail, others that have been able to transition seamlessly to their people working remotely, or who have emerged as being so-called positive social impact companies, they may even now find themselves in a position to grow. But when business is slow and there is an inevitable strain on cash flow, whether these companies choose to actively hire new talent is a decision that will not be taken lightly. Now, bit of history here. Back in the post-war 1940s in America, HP found themselves in a similar position, but ultimately decided that, despite the risks, they couldn't afford not to hire and to take advantage of the jobs market that had become saturated with talented engineers no longer needed by the US military labs. Despite the inevitable challenges faced by job seekers right now, there are, of course, some steps that they can take to maximise their chance of success. Naturally, getting their CV updated is always going to be one of the first pieces of advice that I will give to anyone looking for work. But here are a few other tips. Be proactive. Although the recruitment industry has been possibly one of the hardest hit sectors, a somewhat neglected area, and perhaps a topic for another day, reaching out to recruitment agencies, building relationships, etc., can be hugely beneficial. Even if companies are not hiring right now, these agencies are in the best position to know if and when they do kickstart recruitment once again. Read the news. Keep yourself up to date with industry news and trends. That'll enable you to be much more strategic in your job search. Setting up Google Alerts for companies that you're targeting. That's a great starting point there. Do network. Building relationships has always been vital, and now even more so. If you're not on LinkedIn already, you should be. Comment on stories that you have if you've got a point worth making. Connect with companies you're interested in. Keep up to date with the job opportunities. See what's going on in the market. And enhance your own online presence in general. Now's a great time to scrub your social media accounts, all of them. Make sure there's nothing even potentially compromising out there for public consumption. Recruiters can and will find it. James and his group, the CV Centre, we've launched a social scrub service, I think, a couple of years ago now, and it's helped hundreds of clients present a much more professional impression of themselves, making sure there's nothing hiding in that closet, or not even really hiding out there on social media, and they hadn't even spotted it themselves. Those people who lost their jobs who are furloughed as a result of the pandemic and have kept themselves busy will more than likely come out of this in a much more favourable position. As I discussed in a previous episode, furlonteering has become a thing, and it's not too late for you to find ways to enhance your skill with your CV with new skills and experiences, so that you can impress potential employers with your career resilience during these challenging times. As always, I would really welcome any thoughts, comments, ideas, questions, whatever you may have in that comment section below on this topic, or indeed anything that we're covering in the show today. Now, as you may or may not know, I have written a few books. In fact, I'm the UK's best-selling careers author. Amongst my titles is the interview question and answer book, which I had a copy to hand a second ago, but it's gone now. Never mind. It's available in all good bookshops. In each episode of this YouTube show, I take questions from that book and I look at how to answer them. All this week, I'm taking my questions from the chapter which I entitled The Top 25 Tough Questions Taking the Heat. So here's today's. Do you like to sing in the bath? Now, if you caught the beginning of the show, you heard me singing or trying to sing. I'm not going to repeat that performance. I'm really not. And unless it's by special request, obviously in the comments section, and for a price as well, of course. Anyway, similar questions to this include, what music do you listen to in the car? Eurovision Song Contest or X Factor? But back to the question at hand. Do you like to sing in the bath? Or the shower, I guess. Now, I'll admit, a question like this is not likely to make or break your chance of getting the job, unless you allow it to. The interviewer may hope your answer might give some insight into your personality, your sense of humour, and who knows, perhaps your out-of-work interests. So, how to answer? Do you like to sing in the bath? Well, do you, punk? Seriously, what your answer should definitely not include is any reference to showering, bathing, or anything too personal. And you might want to avoid expressing some definite musical tastes if they're likely to prove controversial or provoke a negative response. If you like, for example, songs from musicals or country and western or anything very niche, perhaps you keep your preferences to yourself, appreciating that not everyone will be a fan of, I don't know, what have I got up here? Gene Pitney, for example. Essentially, stick to safe ground. As usual, I've plucked a little example from my book for you. Yes, sometimes I like singing. I like a good ballad. They may not be to everyone's taste, but I enjoy them, and no one hears me anyway. Singing helps me to relax and clear my head, and that's obviously very important. Short, sweet answer. It's really all you need to say. Now, I'm currently updating the interview question and answer book. I'm working on a brand new edition. So if you have any interview questions which you think I should be considering for possible inclusion, do please let me know in the comments section below. So now, that is pretty much all for today. I'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday, with the next episode. Just two more things before I sign off. First, the usual but important YouTube requests. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, about this show in general, or indeed about life, the universe, the Dirty Harry movies, whatever, do please let me have them below. If you like this episode, then do please hit it with the YouTube thumbs up. And if you have kindly given me a thumbs up, then do think about subscribing to my channel so you don't miss out on the next episode. And if you've already subscribed, remember to ring that bell so that you can receive notifications when I upload new episodes. And if you've already rung that bell, well, I love you. Finally, let me tell you what's happening tomorrow. In tomorrow's show, Wednesday's show, I shall be chatting about a variety of things as always, including how prospects for school leavers and graduates are going to be particularly crappy for some time to come. This choice of topic was inspired by an article I just saw in the Times. Headline, employers have duty to give jobs to Generation COVID, say business chiefs. And next in the interview questions series, we'll be looking at which 3 celebrities you might like to join you for a night out. I do hope you'll tune in. Thank you for watching today. Keep safe and be well, my friends. Goodbye.